Hey, what's up, everybody? Of course, this is King Von Jr. of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. And of course, you can follow me on social media on Twitter/X at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones podcast. And so, of course, as far as that, also been known as social media producer for the unpopular wrestling show Perfect Plex Talk Radio. And so, of course, I'm going to go into. There's quite a bit to dive into on tonight's episode. Of course, one of the main things I want to talk about is the latest Marvel movie that came out, Thunderbolts. Definitely want to share my thoughts about that. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very refreshing, and so like I said, I want to give my Thunderbolts review tonight. I'm going to, of course, I want to say congratulations to SGA of the Oklahoma City Thunder for winning the NBA's MVP award, Most Valuable Player. I mean, it was already already a layup. It was already a no-brainer shot anyway that he was going to end up winning it. Especially since they knocked out Denver in the way they did it. Over the reigning former reigning MVP, the Joker. So if anything, that was a litmus test. It was a make or break, and so he certainly passed that test with flying colors. So of course, first and foremost, I definitely want to say congratulations to SGA for winning the MVP. He is OKC's first player since Westbrook. Really the third player in the Oklahoma City, Thunder history, to win the MVP. Of course, the first one being Kevin Durant, second one being Russell Westbrook, and SGA being the third one. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA. So, like I said, congratulations to him. And so, averaging 32.5 points per game, and so on and so forth. And so, and not only that, but also with the way that they utterly dominated the Minnesota Timberwolves last night in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. So as far as that, and the thing is, OKC just came off a 7-game series, so you would think that they're more exhausted, needed more rest, but that wasn't the case at all. And man, the company just straight up got folded and humbled. And so right now we have the Knicks and Pacers, something that been long waiting for. So of course, right now the Pacers are up at this point, but it's definitely, I would say, this is probably the most anticipated conference finals matchup, of the playoffs this year. Especially with the way the Knicks knocked off the Celtics, thankfully. I couldn't believe I was saying this. I was actually cheering for the Knicks to beat the Celtics. So Boston has 18 anyway, so they don't need nothing else. But yeah, like I said, this NBA playoffs, this is definitely a storyline. Matter of fact, people are going around making jokes. Triple H is fed into these jokes too about WWE wrote the storyline ahead of time for Knicks versus Pacers because of Tyrese Halliburton's interaction with Jalen Brunson last year. So it's kind of like it was like a storyline that was already being set in motion already. So it's definitely great to see. It's something that this Knicks and Pacers matchup we haven't seen in a good 30 years. 25, 30 years. The last time the Knicks were in the conference finals was in 2000. And of course, the Pacers were the team to go to the finals in 2000. They'll end up losing against the Lakers in the finals, but nonetheless, still. But yeah, it's definitely very refreshing to see the NBA have this sort of hard reset. And how all 4 teams have players that have never been in the finals before. So it definitely is. It's very refreshing to see new interesting matchups. Just new matchups. New rivalries and things like that. So it's just like you can definitely see the guard has definitely changed. The guard is the guard has officially changed by this point when it comes to the NBA. And if anything, it's for the better of the league, for the better of the future of the league. So so with that being said, so of course, like I said, hey, you get no complaints from me about that whatsoever. So now, moving on, of course, I'm going to give my review of Thunderbolts. Like I said, if anything, I will say that that thoroughly enjoyed the movie because it was certainly um, a fresh take. A very intriguing story. It's definitely a new, like I say, a different story, a different concept. I will say that this feels like Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad, where you have a group of supporting uh, characters, you know, uh, the ones that that nobody really know that nobody's checking for, a cast of characters that you would not want to see them do a solo movie, let alone a sequel or a trilogy or whatever. Like you have those that are considered by society as deplorable. You know what I mean? Like, some people have done some really, really messed up stuff. And, like it's just like, people were filled with regrets. You know what I mean? You have people that, that want to have their own redemption arc, want to show that they can have another chance. You know what I mean? You have these characters that you would never choose to lead a team, that you would never choose to be franchise players. If you thought the Guardians of the Galaxy were D-list, um, sort of bargain basement team, like when they first started, if you thought about that, about the Guardians at first, nah, I'm gonna say this. The Thunderbolts make the Guardians of the Galaxy look like the Avengers. In terms of what they bring to the table, in terms of marquee value, in terms of just side by side, it's not even close. You know what I mean? And and of course, like I said, you have a bunch of off-brand names, if you will, that are on this team. You have Yelena, who was definitely one of my favorites in this movie. And so of course, shout out to Florence Pugh for the way that she played that part. If anything, Yelena was pretty much, it's pretty much the heart of the group, and you could definitely tell that that she has a lot of regret over the things that she's done over the life and career that she's chosen. Um, and so of course, we all know that Elena is Natasha Romanoff's younger sister, and so now she's filling in that role that Natasha, that mantle that Natasha carried. And the only difference is that Yelena is more of a lead figure for her team when Natasha was not. You know, uh, but the biggest, and of course, in that aspect, when you think about it, if we slam, but yeah, let me see. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, it's just like the more you think about it, though, the biggest reason why Natasha, was never the lead. I mean, look who's on the team with her. You know what I mean? So when you have a team, that's as top heavy and just alpha male driven as the Avengers, yeah, you got to end up have to settle for being, sort of like the fifth rung on the ladder, if you will. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's just like you look at what Yelena is, have to deal with. Look at the likes of a John Walker, aka U.S. agent, who for the longest time has got this reputation. And the thing is, they even joke about it in the movie about how much he's a Timu version of Captain America. That's been his reputation. As far back as the show, Falcon and Winter Soldier. You know what I mean? Because when it comes to moral compass, when it comes to integrity, when it comes to maintaining a moral standard and values and things like that, this dude is the complete opposite of Steve Rogers. You know what I mean? So so if anything, if anything, everybody knows, everybody can see right through him as a team version of Captain America. You'll never be capped. You'll never be capped. To the point where to the point where U.S. agent killed somebody on live TV. You know, um, with that shield. That very same shield that Steve Rogers carried with honor and dignity and pride, the very same shield that he carried to lead the Avengers, all of a sudden had the blood of somebody else on it. Um, I mean, like it was used as a weapon for murder. So with that, you could tell that John Walker, Walker Texas Rangers, as somebody else called him, is definitely having regrets. He's looking for redemption. He's looking for his place on the team. He's looking for his place in society. He's looking for you know uh, what he can bring to the table. But you could tell that he still is very obnoxious. Um, there's still those obnoxious tendencies that he just not a very remorseful dude at all whatsoever. um, so you have him, you have Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp, of course real name's Ava, who makes a suit to keep her body from from burning up and disintegrating. Of course you have Taskmaster, who um, has the ability to, who has a photographic memory, where she can copy anybody else's moves. You have Red Guardian, who's the Soviet version of what Steve Rogers, is here in America. You know what I mean? So you have, these D-level names uh, all coming together, for the greater good. And so if you thought that they were some F ups, then, we see that, the Val is a bigger F up or, mess up than they are. If anything, Val herself, is really the villain ultimately. What I mean? And just, just how cold and narcissistic that this lady is, just cringeworthy. What I mean? So like I say, I'm not gonna like be long with it and take up a whole bunch of time, but um, so of course Val definitely has a lot of cases on her head, a lot of blood on her hands, um, and also especially when it comes to this they call it the Century Project. And I would say that the MVP of this movie was my man Robert Reynolds, uh, played by, I think his name Lewis Pullman. I know he's the son of actor Bill Pullman, and he not only does does this dude look exactly like his dad, uh, but like he definitely uh, made maximize that role. What I mean? It's like this dude was made for that role or something. What I mean? And just how this speaks to a lot of mental health. What I mean? Especially when it comes to a guy like him, who, deals with his own, with his own depression and everything like that, and and just how he was, the least likely of them to make an impact. You know, um, and just like and all of a sudden, just when you count them out, this dude is the one that you least expected to to be the most valuable out of the group and in the whole story. I also like the chemistry that Bob and Elena have in this movie. It's very reminiscent of Bruce and Natasha. Bruce, aka the Hulk, and of course, is referring to Hulk and Black Widow. And and so just how the chemistry is, always on point. Um, and this to me is not that much different. And so every time they are around Bob, especially by themselves, it's just like this. They get this PTSD, like this really bad memory is unlocked from something in their past that they're ashamed of. In Elena's case, it was a flashback um, of a kid her age ends up getting killed. Uh, when it comes to U.S. agent John Walker, his flashback was um, just the dysfunction at home. When it comes to his wife and his son, and how his wife was fed up with him not being attentive, and ends up getting revealed later on, you know, that she left him and took their son with her. You know what I mean? So go show that even though he puts on this facade of being Captain America, this persona that he just brainwashes himself into believing, right? You tell yourself something long enough, eventually you're gonna believe it. You're gonna convince yourself. So for all this time, he's been convincing himself that that he's this guy, that that he has this mantle, but behind the scenes, when it comes to being a family man, that's where he really falls short. You know what I mean? And so that was definitely one of the one of the key points in this movie. Even Val had a uh, flashback to when she was a kid, how she uh, witnessed her dad, witnessed her dad getting murdered in cold blood right in front of her. But you could clearly tell that had little of nothing to do to make her change um, anything else about her. She's like I said, she's still unremorseful. She still just has this evilness about her, like just condescending. You know what I mean? But shout out to to Julia Dreyfus. Did a great job playing Val. It's like if Elaine from Seinfeld turned heel. That's who Val is. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, like I said, as far as that, and also before I go any further, of course, we see Bucky, Sebastian Stan. Bucky is of course retired. From being an Avenger. He's now gotten into politics. You know, we see that, and I definitely like the chemistry between Julia Louis Dreyfus and Wendell Pierce. You know what I mean, and just how they were able to bounce off each other. You know what I mean, and so so as far as that, like I said, with those things, but just the biggest thing, especially, um, is how dysfunctional they are, and how that was put on full display in the biggest fight, in the movie, and just especially with Century being unleashed, and how Century was, um, was initially created to be uh, Val's ultimate weapon. you know, and the introduction to Century was great, and not only goes from Century to being the Void. I was like, man, this is next level. But of course, in the end, Val, ends up getting hers in the end, if you will. And so, so now it's gotten to the point where now the Thunderbolts have been renamed the quote unquote New Avengers. Um, and they're, of course, we'll also see um, a, we're not spoiling, because the movie's been out for a minute, so why not? But we also see a cut scene that's going to have a link to the Fantastic Four, you know, um, and just like I said, what impressed me, especially like I said, my MVP for the movie was Sentry. You know what I mean? Like this dude came, saw, he conquered, and and just how um, he is. He's been seen as Marvel's version of Superman. For the longest time. They both have an S. Superman has an S on his chest. Sentry has an S on his belt, and that belt looked awesome in that movie. Especially same with the costume. I was like, man, this like they really did really did the thing when it came to Sentry. And I was thoroughly impressed. But yeah, I will say this: this has been the highest rated uh, movie when it comes to what phase 5 I want to say it was. I kind of lost track of the phase. It must be phase 4 or 5. Um, but yeah, it's really been actually it's been like the highest rated movie um, in the one of the highest rated movies in the post Endgame era. Along with like I said, along with Spider-Man, No Way Home, as well as Shang-Chi. This is definitely up there in that conversation. And if anything, I'd probably get about a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. You know, um, I will say that it was better than a Brave New World. That's for sure. And so on. So I like I said, it was definitely a great time. In more ways than one. So that is my review of Thunderbolts. So now it is time to go into, um, and also another sports news. I also want to say rest in peace to Jim Irsay, who was the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, RIP to Jim Irsay, and not long before that, Sabu died. So of course, RIP to both of them. And now it's time to move on. To move on. And of course, this week was also 14 years since the tragic death of the Macho Man Randy Savage. So it's been a pretty tough week in more ways than one. So now it's time for the SmackDown results. The week in wrestling, of course. It's SmackDown. Of course, it definitely had a lot of. There was definitely a lot to talk about when it came to SmackDown. So of course, we see, of course, just the aftermath of John Cena retaining the WWE title against Randy Orton. And what was billed to be their final match together. And of course, speaking of wrestling, I want to give a shout out to my. I already gave him a shout out, of course, Mac Millie last week from Smart Psychology podcast. Excuse me. And of course, the King of the Red Cups. So of course, the Red Cup Psychology is the name of last week's episode. But if you want to go back and listen to it, it's definitely on iTunes and Spotify. Go check it out. Amazing episode. So of course, John Cena was to have a fresh new challenger to dethrone him. And we also saw Jacob Fatu, of course, Jacob Fatu and the rest of this group became called the Bloodline anymore. Especially because of Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, being injured, and that shuts that whole Bloodline thing down now. And of course, Solo's lost to Ulafala, so it's just like it's kind of hard to tell what they want to call themselves now. But of course, we also got a video that recap Backlash, as we saw a newcomer to the WWE. Not a newcomer by age, but just in terms of his debut, Jeff Cobb. So it's kind of like another offshoot of the Bloodline, I guess you could say. But there's nothing really Bloodline-ish about this that much anymore. It's just like we're moving further and further away from this variation is moving further and further away from the essence of the Bloodline, if you will. You know what I mean? So so in terms of Roman, of course, Roman not being involved anymore. Um, so of course, like that initial bloodline um, is finished, and of course, this is a brand, the initial, like the one with Jacob, Solo, and the Tongans. That was, like I say, that was was an offshoot, but it's just like it's gotten pretty much diluted at this point. But yeah, like I said, you have Solo Sikoa, Jeff Cobb, and Jacob Fatu. Of course, made their way to the ring, and Street Champ welcomed excuse me, not Jacob, but Jeff Cobb to the family. He credited Jeff Cobb for Jacob Fatu retaining the U.S. title, and this is what really angered Jacob. You know what I mean? And so, and definitely, of course, this is the the opening segment, and it really got off to a heated start. This is where Jacob ripped the mic away from Solo and said he has done everything he said he would do. And this is when when things really got tense. This is when things really got to a boiling point because at this point, if I'm Jacob, now I feel like you're playing in my face with this part right here. This one where things really got tense, because this one Solo Sikoa asked Jacob Fatu to tell him they loved him, and of course, and the way he said it, he's like, "Come on," he was like, "Come on, Jacob, tell me you love me," tell me, and not only that, but he's also saying, say it like you always do, tell me you love me, like, tell me that you love me the way that you always do, and that's when he wanted to, get Jacob to say, "I love you, Solo," and just yell it like that, and that was Solo was trying to bring that out of him to make fun of him. Solo wanted to get Jacob out of character and to turn Solo would have turned Jacob to a caricature. That's one of those things where when somebody has made up in their mind that they want to embarrass you in public, they want you to, I mean, like if they'll ask you, try to get you to say certain things, um, you know, uh, in an attempt to humiliate you, in an attempt to get people to laugh at you. And so, how can I say this? Solo did that because he wanted to get a laugh out of Jacob. That's really what that was. It's like it's like somebody that you consider to be both a friend or family, um, looking for ways to, uh, you know, to to have other people, laugh at you, while they laugh at you as well. I hope I'm saying it, it's like that. That's the best way I can really say it, But if anything, he just wanted to make a buffoon out of Jacob, plain and simple. And Jacob was not falling for it. He saw right through Solo, like Solo was made out of glass, and it's just like, that allegiance is really not as strong, you know. And quite frankly, I don't blame Jacob, because, how are you going to try to sun me, try to make me, into a caricature, a sideshow act? That's really who he wanted to turn Jacob into a sideshow comedy act. That's really what that was. So how are you going to try to turn me into a sideshow when I've already eclipsed you? I haven't even been in the company as long, but yet, here we are. We've been a part of the same faction. This 2.0 version of the bloodline. Here we are, and you were supposed to be my tribal chief, but fast forward, like if I'm Jacob, I'm looking at Solo like, how dare you try to sun me? You know, Meanwhile, I'm the one who had a WrestleMania match and you didn't. Not only did Jacob have a not only did Jacob have a WrestleMania match, but he won the title at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? So it's just like, how's it, excuse me, for someone like Solo to still try to, to walk around. Hold on, hold on. Sorry about that, but yeah, like I said, it's just like, if I'm Jacob, it's like, like I said, if I'm Jacob, I'm looking at Solo sideways. I'm like, you know, I can't even respect you the same way like that no more. You know, um, and you could definitely tell that there's cracks in their armor. And it's only a matter of time before this whole thing disintegrates and deteriorates. Because originally, um, there was a plan for that match to happen at WrestleMania, but unfortunately, as we all know, that fell through, and Jacob ends up getting a title shot. I guess LA Knight obviously ends up winning. So when you look at the pecking order for real, Jacob has definitely flown past Solo. Of course, Solo, trying to be this, mob boss, this, hot, chief or whatever the case is. But it's just like his trajectory hasn't been the same ever since he lost to Roman on Monday night, on that first Raw on Netflix, like on the opening Raw on Netflix in LA. You know what I mean? So, and of course we know that, that Roman wasn't gonna be losing such a high profile, match like that, with Netflix, on the debut of Netflix. There's no way that was going to happen, and so and so as far as that, it's just that, Solo hasn't had the same, I guess, swagger, if you will. And of course he was never going to have Roman's aura, but still, it's just like, he's not someone who's as formidable as you thought he would be. And if I'm Jacob, I'm looking at that, like, yeah, you ain't, all that you say that you are, all that you think that you are, and I don't want to, belabor this point, point any further. Um, but before it could even progress any further, LA Knight's music hit, and he appeared behind them, and and pulled Jeff Cobb out the ring, for a quick attack before he retreated into the crowd to avoid everybody else. But this feud with Jacob and Solo has been definitely been building for months. as it's definitely been boiling. It's like WWE's finally ready to commit to a full speed ahead. Uh, it definitely shows how fragile this this bond that they have is. What I mean, that you could definitely tell it's about to deteriorate, and it's deteriorating right now. Then we have Alexa Bliss versus Meet Chin versus Chelsea Green. The winner of this match is Alexa Bliss, and afterwards, of course, we see Alexa Bliss telling Charlotte backstage, how she's talking about how she's going to need her, whatever. But yeah, and of course, I'm gonna say of course a lot, but yeah, and obviously Alexa Bliss came back soon, so there's no way that that you're gonna have her lose like that. I'm still side-eyeing her, still still having that toy, still, like just carrying over, the whole, this Bray Wyatt-ish type of character that she's had. Like, it's about time that kind of move her on to something else. Um, all right then, but of course we have Fraxium versus DIY, um, and the winners of this match, Fraxium. I will say it was definitely absolutely great match, by the way. Um, you know, and so as far as that's concerned, then next we have Aleister Black versus Carmelo Hayes, a really nice match. And unfortunately, this ends in a no contest. Because the Miz prevented a clean ending by interfering, but he ended up taking Aleister's black mass kick once again, and then, of course, Carmelo attacked out Aleister, hit him with his finisher to leave him down for the count in the ring. Match is great, but the ending left a lot to be desired. And I like what they're doing with Melo. For him to be affiliated with the Miz is definitely a great way to get him more familiar with the main roster audience, and to just familiarize him with the main roster WWE environment. And so, and I think from this could be his launching pad to propel him, even further in whatever direction that they really see fit. And it really just to prove that he's someone that they can take seriously, if anything, at the end of the day. So, if working with the Miz is what it takes, then let it happen. I mean? If anything, it's going to end up doing miracles for, I believe, for Melo. If anything, in the long run, as long as WWE does it right. We also have Solo Sikoa versus Jimmy Uso versus Rey Fenix. Of course, the winner of this match was Solo Sikoa, and so of course, and also we also have LA Knight versus JC Mateo, Jacob Fatu. I mean, not Jacob Fatu, Jeff Cobb. And we see that the Jeff Cobb defeated LA Knight. And last but not least, in the main event, we have Tippy Stratton versus Nia Jax. And this is an excellent match. And I'll say that, that, of course, the highlights of this match were Naomi and Jake, Naomi and Jay Cargill's interferences, and of course, like I said, Nia has definitely been putting in the work. She's been phenomenal since she came back. But like I said, like the things that really turned the tide for this match were where Naomi come to the ring with a chair in her hand, and that chair will play a vital part in the outcome of the match. Of course, Jay Cargill ran down and took Naomi out from prevent her from interfering. So of course, and the thing is, so of course, Nia Jax kicked out of the prettiest moonsault ever and pushed Tiffany to the floor when she tried to hit a second moonsault. Then Nia hits a Samoan drop onto the table, which didn't break. which did not break. So of course, we see Nia Jax, falling to Tiffany when she tried to counter the Annihilator. But of course, Tiffany grabbed the rope to break the count. Just as Nia had, flattened her with the Annihilator. Then we see this is where the tide really changes, where Nia grabs Naomi's chair and tries to use it, but just as she's making that turn, she's just picking the chair up, barely just barely making a move. All of a sudden, Tiffany just catches her with a drop kick and just smack, just nails Nia, in the head, and like instantly, Nia just is busted open, starts bleeding. I was like, man, and with no more than a few seconds after the chair makes contact with Nia's head, all of a sudden you just see a crimson mask, and of course, this is when, of course, this one when Tiffany, Tiffany hits the prettiest moonsault for the win, and it's a miracle that Nia did not, like I say, it's a miracle, that and a blessing that Nia did not suffer a concussion after that, because that, looking back at that footage, I was like, that is brutal, and that was sudden too. I said, man, for her, for that blood, for that blood to gush out of Nia's head like that so fast, I was like, man, so I was like, yeah, but as far as that, I would definitely say that that this definitely SmackDown, pretty much for the books. It was a great SmackDown the week before Saturday night's main event. Then now it's time to move over to Monday Night Raw. Of course, it's just 5 days, but before the latest edition of Saturday night's main event, Jey Uso, battles Braun Breaker in the main event. For the World Heavyweight title. But of course, as far as the match card, we have Jey Uso versus Braun Breaker. Then we have a women's Money in the Bank qualifying match: Rhea Ripley versus Kairi Sane versus Zoe Stark. Then we have another women's qualifying. If you notice, the qualifying matches are always triple threat matches. We have Natalya versus Roxanne Perez versus Becky Lynch. So Roxanne Perez, by the way, is officially part of the WWE main roster. Then we also have Sheamus versus Grayson Waller. More on that later. Of course, we see Gunther interrupting Logan Paul. Logan Paul kicked off Raw, eager to discuss his World Heavyweight Championship match against Jey Uso Saturday night on NBC on Saturday night's main event. Of course, it was also on Peacock as well. Interestingly, it drew the ire of Gunther, the anger of Gunther, who interrupted Logan and came face to face with him. And so, after tricking, Logan, at least fooling to his false sense of camaraderie, if you will, man thinking he was his friend or something, Gunther warned him of the fate that awaited him if he robbed, the Ring General of getting revenge on Jey Uso on June 9th in Phoenix. And so of course, Logan Paul, unwilling to let things lie, attempted to talk trash to Gunther as he left the ring, only to turn around and eat a super kick from Jey Uso. And of course, Jey Uso had a departing word or two, and it's still tall to finish the segment. And as well, I know that departing word was 4 letters known as yeet. You know what I mean? Whatever. And of course, a pretty solid opening. But yeah, it definitely saw some moving pieces in the world title picture as Gunther, of course, Logan Paul is the number 1 contender, and Gunther has inserted himself back into this main title picture. I knew he wasn't going to be away from a title for long anyway. That's just Gunther's character. He's always has to have a championship, centered around him. But I mean, of course, Logan and Gunther, both kept Jey Uso's attention about while Jey also has to focus on his rivalry with Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. And so as far as that, I definitely like the way this segment went. We also have Penta and AJ Styles versus Finn Balor and JD McBobblehead. Uh, the winners of this match are Finn and Lord Farquhar. JD McBobblehead as he defeats Penta and AJ Styles. It was definitely a great match. Especially from in ring standpoint. And we see that Penta definitely has his you know has his issues with the Judgment Day himself. And when you think about it, I mean, you got Finn versus AJ. There's a rivalry that's pretty much written in the stars. Like, especially when you look at their history with when it comes to the Bullet Club previously in New Japan, what have you. But anyway, of course, we also have Natalia versus Roxanne Perez versus Becky Lynch in a triple threat match. The winner of this match is Roxanne Perez, and Roxanne has definitely definitely made an impression. Quite an impression in more ways than one, because backstage we saw her give Dirty Dom some chicken nuggets, especially since Liv Morgan has been away shooting a movie. But now that Liv is done, yeah, she ain't gonna like that. You know what I mean? So I mean, if anything, Liv is definitely gonna, it's definitely gonna have her vengeance, if you will. So yeah, you can definitely tell that she's not gonna take too kindly about that right now. But yeah, of course we see that Roxanne Perez is gonna be punching her ticket for Money in the Bank, and we see that of course, it's definitely an excellent match culminating with the finish that made sense given the tension and dislike between Becky Lynch and between Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria. You know what I mean? So as far as that, especially since Lyra's a champion, the Intercontinental champion, so they appear destined to dance once more for the women's Intercontinental title, while Roxanne Perez heads to Money in the Bank for her first shot at the briefcase and the guaranteed title opportunity that comes with it. So they're really putting the rocket on Roxanne's back now at this point, especially since she's just made the transition to the main roster. And of course, Roxanne took advantage as she delivered pop rocks to Natalia and cashed in ticket to the June 7th, Money in the Bank in Los Angeles. And of course, we see that Natalia definitely has a different color scheme instead of the traditional heart, pink and black. She was wearing sky blue. You know what I mean? So not only WWE creative could keep the same energy and find something for Natalia to do, especially off of her highly acclaimed appearance at Bloodsport over WrestleMania weekend. I was like, I mean, it's just there's something else, that Natty shows that she still got it. Let's just put it that way. And so backstage, we saw Seth Rollins confront Logan Paul. And of course, you see that the visionary was looking to manipulate Logan, because he knows he can beat him for the world title, but not necessarily either, Jey Uso or Gunther. It sounds like, there's definitely, Seth is a very manipulative figure. That's why he was the architect. That's why the visionary, revolutionary, everything like that. So next up we also have Sheamus versus Grayson Waller, and the winner of this match is obviously Sheamus, and we can definitely see that there's a slow face turn for Austin Theory coming up, especially with the way he was laughing at Grayson Waller, getting chopped by Sheamus. And so it's just like, now it's time to pull the trigger with this already. They've been teasing, an eventual breakup, but now it's time, Triple H, enough of this slow build. Let's just go ahead and just pull the trigger, because we know what's about to happen. And there was also a big announcement that Tyrese Halliburton is going to be on WWE 2K25 later this year as a DLC character. Then we have Rhea Ripley versus Kairi Sane versus Zoe Starks, and unfortunately Zoe Starks got injured, um, and but it was already no brainer that Rhea Ripley was going to win and qualify for the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So the winner of this match, Mommy herself, Rhea Ripley. So it looks like that Rhea is probably going to be carrying even more weight when it comes to being sort of the face of the women's division with Bianca's injury. But of course, but at the same time, Bianca should be. They said she'd be coming back by June or July. So I don't think they're really going to run Rhea too much into the ground like that. And then of course the final match, Jey Uso, Jey Uso versus Braun Breaker. In this match, of course, Jey Uso defeats Braun Breaker by way of disqualification. Of course, especially since we saw Logan Paul come out of nowhere and deliver a hard right to knock Jey out. So as far as that, and of course, once again backstage, like I said, we saw see tensions building within the Judgment Day, especially with Roxanne Perez making her debut. And this is quite a way to make a first impression. Hope it doesn't come back to bite her though. But yeah, it's definitely a great episode of Monday Night Raw. And last night on NXT, like I said, I'm not gonna be long-winded with this. Like I say, of course, last night at NXT, we have Trick Williams and Joe Hendry having concerts, at least performing. We have Kalani Jordan versus Zarya, Javon Evans versus Sean Legacy versus Ashanti the Adonis, Josh Briggs versus Sean Spears, Chase U versus OTM. We're starting off with a triple threat match with Javon Evans versus Sean Legacy versus Ashanti the Adonis. And by the way, side note, Team Javon Evans, especially after that Ricochet, back and forth, Twitter beef, that was hilarious. But yeah, of course, but at the end of the day, the Legacy defeated Javon and Ashanti. Then the next we have Josh Briggs versus Sean Spears. The winner of this match, Sean Spears. Chase U versus OTM. The winners of this match, OTM. They're going to defeat Chase U. So it's just like, man, all right, it's just like you can definitely tell that that Andre's pretty much he's pretty much run his course when it comes to Chase U. It's kind of hard to tell what WWE's playing with him is going to be. Then we have Lola Vice versus Fallon Henley. The winner of this match, no other than Lola Vice herself. We have Kalani Jordan versus Zarya. The winner of this match is Kalani. And we, like I said, we also have, and like if anything, the biggest highlights of this were Trick Williams' rap video, his diss track, saying he's never gonna back down to an average Joe or whatever, and it was even funnier, especially when they have the Joe Hendry cosplayer, and Lash Legend just runs right past that dude and runs Trick's runs to Trick's truck. I thought that was pretty funny. You know what I mean? So as far as that, and then Joe Hendry claps back and has his own concert where he brings up this corny video. It seems like some rip-off horror movie, whatever it is, when Trick was was still Mello's bodyguard, his sidekick, if you will. And so clearly Trick was not feeling that. That definitely rubbed him the wrong way, to the point where he proceeded to attack Hendry. And so first it looked like things were pretty cool, but as Trick was going for the trick shot, Joe Hendry had something for him. He fired back and hit Trick in that knee with his guitar. I was like, oh, all right now, and so so as far as that, this weekend is definitely gonna be, definitely gonna be pretty heavy when it comes to, uh, when it comes to PLEs. So I'm gonna go in and look at this Saturday night's main event card. I'm gonna get my predictions on it. And I'm gonna go into look at this NXT Battleground card as well. And that is, that's, of course, this is where I'm gonna, pretty much, get, this is gonna be the end of tonight. Gonna be These are gonna be the two segments that are gonna be the end of tonight's show. And so, all right, so the Saturday night main event full card is only gonna be 4 matches. The Triple H era is 4 or 5 matches, and that's it. We're moving on. So Saturday night's main event starts at 8 o'clock. So the matches on the card are Jey Uso versus Logan Paul for the World Heavyweight Championship, CM Punk and Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. Then we have, of course, undisputed WWE Champion John Cena versus R-Truth. Then we have Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre in a steel cage match. So my prediction is that Jey Uso defeats Logan Paul to retain the World Heavyweight title. So when it comes to Punk and Sammy versus Seth and Braun, I have Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker defeating CM Punk and Sami Zayn, especially for the sake of elevating Braun Breaker, more than ever before. You know what I mean? So you really have to make him more formidable. So why not? Especially at the expense of Punk and Sami Zayn. Then we have the undisputed WWE Championship between John Cena and R-Truth. The winner of that match, no brainer, is going to be John Cena. And for Damian versus Drew, the steel cage match, I have Damian Priest winning that match and having his revenge for losing at WrestleMania. So those are my predictions. For Saturday, I have Jey Uso, Seth and Braun. And I think it's going to be some type of a fluke finish or something. But like I said, I got Seth and Braun winning. They have Cena defeating R-Truth. And I also have Damian Priest defeating Drew McIntyre. So those are my predictions for Saturday night. And when it comes to, when it comes to NXT Battleground, I'm going to look at the match card, and I'm going to give my predictions give my predictions for said match card. And the Knicks is definitely, doing their thing big time. They got Mary J. Blige performing at halftime. Or at least to open. Actually, they had Mary J. Blige, perform earlier. Excuse me. But yeah, like I said, of course, for NXT Battleground, I will say that Stephanie Vaquer, her stock has been on the rise. So, oof. This stuff is a tough one right here between Stephanie Vaquer and Jordan Grace. I'm a big fan of La Primera. It's just like my head said that she's going to win, but you know what? Jordan Grace has so much momentum, on her side right now. I might want to have to say Jordan. My head says Stephanie, my heart says Jordan. It's just too tough to call, because it's just like on one end, Jordan has too much momentum. You don't want to have her, coming up short. At the same time, I want to see Stephanie, have a pretty lengthy title reign, because she deserves it. But this could very well be Jordan Grace's moment. So worse. Actually, I'm gonna have to say Jordan Grace for this one. They've been making it look like a big deal, especially since she's coming from TNA, and who knows that Stephanie could be getting a call up to the main roster sooner rather than later. So in that case, if that's going to be the case, I'm going to have to say Jordan. Then we have Obafemi versus Miles Bourne. Obafemi's going to flatten Miles Bourne. Randy Orton Jr. is going to. Like I said, congratulations, for Miles for for making it. In spite of his disability and his the shortcomings and things that he's had to had to overcome. But in this case, R.I.P. Miles Bourne, man. Seriously, I mean, this is gonna be he's gonna flatten this dude. Um, and then of course we have Joe Hendry versus Trick Williams for the TNA World Championship. Um, Joe Hendry's, I think Joe Hendry's gonna get the W, and I guess to redeem himself after getting crushed by Randy Orton at WrestleMania. Um, so as far as that, he's I think Hendry's gonna have to show that he's more than a meme and a really cool theme song. But it's definitely not gonna be the last time that they meet. So we have Sol Ruka versus Kalani Jordan for the NXT Women's North American Championship. So Ruka is going to continue her NXT ascent. She's going to continue her reign as the NXT Women's North American Champion. Tony D'Angelo versus Stax, who turned on him. Traitor. Stax is nothing but a cold-blooded traitor. The Don is going to send Stax packing. That's what's going to happen. Then we have Hank and Tank versus Josh Briggs and the Cullen. Of course, Josh Briggs and his group is going to live up to the name. Of course, I got Josh Briggs' team defeating Sean Spears' team. So those are my predictions. And fun fact, Battleground takes place in Tampa on Roman Reigns' 40th birthday. Little Easter egg right there. But yeah, like I said, that's pretty much it when it comes to when it comes to my predictions for Saturday night's main event and Battleground. So now, without further ado, it is time for the birthday shoutouts. Of course, on May. On May 20th, I already gave my birthday shoutouts last week for May 19th. But of course, on May 20th, Busta Rhymes turns 53. May 21st, Notorious B.I.G. Of course, today he would have turned 53. On May 21st, Mr. T turns 73. On the same day, Ron Isley from the legendary Isley Brothers turns 84. On of course, on May 22nd, on May 22nd, Daniel Bryan turns 44. Brian Pillman will turn 63. Taylor Rooks turns 33. Bray Wyatt would have turned 38 on May 22nd. May 23rd, Aaron Donald turns 34. Of course, on May 24th, Patty LaBelle turns 81. Trace McGrady turns 46. Heavy D would have turned 58. And of course, Roman Reigns turns 40. Williams got a birthday as well coming up also. And like I said, Roman Reigns turns 40 on May 25th. And on May 26th, just going ahead of myself, Trick Williams turns 31. And so that's it that's it when it comes to the birthdays this week. And also, what? Yes, and so of course, also I want to give a word of wisdom is that God is interested in producing godly offspring, and that God has raised up a generation of children that they'll stand up against the enemy, and will not be persuaded to go down the wrong path. And so as far as that, and also of course also important to praise God ahead of time before. Before the outcome even takes place. So as far as that, those are my words of wisdom. And also remember that you are victorious because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast. Of course, make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that you download podcasts. You can also watch by way of YouTube, youtube.com/Advon Resper Jr. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. So of course, like I said, thank you very much for listening and watching, and may this day be the very best day of your life.